Hello guys, Sir Grandelot here, and as I'm doing my artifact slash mining expedition, I wanted to share my thoughts on meta when it comes to Genshin Impact. Because, well, the term meta by itself means most effective tactic available, although very often it has been referred to as the most effective strategy available, which is a little bit different but very similar meaning. And it's a term that has been going on since well before Genshin Impact, even when multiplayer games did not exist. Like when games decades ago were only single player and meta were referring to the best strategy to defeat whatever boss there was, and items to use, and technique to use, and all this sort of stuff. And Genshin Impact is the same from point of view, because when you fight with a boss or when you want to clear the abyss, there is definitely a meta there. Let me check if the microphone is on. Oh, okay. I was about to vomit at the thought that the microphone was off. I'm doing this off script while I'm playing, so I may have a few aneurysms here and there. But there is a big difference between meta in... Oh, I already got these artifacts. Between meta in Genshin Impact and meta in other games. What do I mean by that? A game that I often bring up is Dark Age of Camelot, a multiplayer Real versus Real game. And battles there could be one against one, or group against group, or hundreds of people against hundreds of people. There was no fight that was set in stone. You would just go and find whatever the opposing realm would throw at you. And in the game, the meta was consistently changing. It was never stale. The reason being not just for the new releases in terms of expansions, new equipment, and stuff like that, but because the meta was player driven. Meaning that an example that I remember very clearly from a period of the game was that for the longest time, teams full of tanks would perform much better. Then there were a few new releases in terms of patches, not really balanced patches, but patches with new content that gave a lot of new stuff both to tanks and casters. But this ended up helping the caster classes a bit because they went from almost unplayable to actually okay. And the way the meta changed was that it got to the point where teams full of casters, with like 3 casters and a few support units, would actually perform extremely well against teams full of tanks. Because it was very difficult for the tanks to close the gap. And casters also had a few tricks up their sleeves when it came to killing tanks when they got too close. So this created a huge shift in the meta in Dark Age of Camelot, meaning that a lot of teams were full of casters. So what was the best strategy to fight against a team full of casters? Well, it was to have a team with a lot of tanks and 1 or 2 casters, whose job was not really to deal damage, but to interrupt the opposing casters. And so suddenly, overnight, there was this sudden surge in hybrid teams, with mostly tanks, but a few casters who had the role of not really dealing damage, but interrupting the opposing team. And then what happened after that? That those hybrid teams tended to struggle a bit against teams that were full of tanks. And so it became a bit of a rock, paper, scissors situation. But it was not just 3 variables like rock, paper, scissors. There were tens of them. And this would generate some teams that had a huge advantage against certain other team compositions, but completely suck against others. Some that were fairly balanced. It kept changing for decades, because Dark Age of Camelot has been around for very, very long. And why did I bring up Dark Age of Camelot? Because Genshin Impact is a very, very different game, in the sense that meta in Genshin Impact is decided by Mihoyo, not by the gamers. You don't decide how well your team will perform in the Abyss based on the Abyss blessing and monster composition of the Abyss. It's Mihoyo that wants to sell a particular character, and they arrange the Abyss in a way that that character will look extremely well. For example, the current Abyss, I'm recording this on the 10th of January. The current Abyss, in the second half you have a mono Geo team, you're going to obliterate the Abyss. Absolutely obliterate. I've reached numbers with Noel that make absolutely no sense. Like, it was a joke, and you're basically immortal, you're destroying everything, it makes no sense. And it happens because they want to sell Itto. And even Shenhe definitely benefits from the kind of Abyss. Abyss blessing. And it happens like that all the time with Genshin Impact. Sometimes you have a blessing that screws your teams completely, and then you look at the banner, and you're like, oh wow, I'm missing 1 star, but if I had this, everything would be solved. It's what Mihoyo wants you to do. And that's the meta in Genshin Impact. Oh, I already got the stuff here. Meta in Genshin Impact is decided by Mihoyo. So chasing it endlessly, it's not very healthy for players. So I have nothing against people who theorycraft and always look for the best team compositions and the perfect rotations and all this sort of stuff. But it seems to me that, like, sometimes there is a bit too much focus on that aspect of the game because it's overkill. And what I mean by overkill is that if you look at the last few videos that I uploaded, I got full stars on the last floor of the Abyss, using on one side basically random teams with Chi-Chi as the on-field carry. One of them made sense, 2 were absolutely trash teams that should not have worked well, but they did actually. And is Chi-Chi meta? It depends on your point of view. Is your goal to get 9 stars in the Abyss and you have Chi-Chi? You build those teams, you're going to get 9 stars. Is she the most effective character available? No, not by far. But the point that I'm trying to make is that you don't need the most effective characters available. Mihoyo relies on your fear of missing out. Like, you open the banner and you see Shenhe and you're like, oh my god, if I miss all those juicy cryo bonuses, it's doomed for me. Like, it's over. I will never recover. You will recover. You don't need to worry about it. The same for Xiao. Like, some people are like, oh my god, Xiao is no longer meta. He does not even have an artifact set built for him. Hashtag exposed. Xiao is an absolutely fine character. But the game is a gacha game. They need to release characters that are better and better than what is already available. Otherwise, the player base would have no reason to pull and build new characters. So Mihoyo needs to release characters that are better. Or in some cases, they can do what happened with Albedo, that they released a new weapon and a new artifact for him, meaning that, oh yeah, the weapon is free. Yeah, but you need the resources to level it up, you need the Mora, you need the weapon level up materials, and then he has a new artifact set. That's great, and it's great, don't get me wrong. But what does it mean that you need to spend resin to farm the new artifact set? And does it compare with the old one that you have? Because the Husk set that I got for my Albedo is garbage compared to what I use on Noel. So, is it worth it? Not so much. You need to be careful when it comes to meta discussions. You need to understand where you sit on the spectrum. And by spectrum I mean that most Genshin Impact players can be placed on a spectrum that goes from uber meta slaves that only pull based on what some Chinese theory crafter comes up with after a few sleepless nights of doing math on several characters, and other players who pull simply because they like a waifu or they like a husbando and they will pull for that character. And there is nothing wrong with that, by the way. You can play the characters that you want. But the vast majority of players, in my opinion, are basically around the middle of that spectrum. Like, sometimes pulling for a character because they really like it, even if I don't know if it's good. Or vice versa, like sometimes pulling for a character that maybe they don't like so much, but they keep hearing, oh, this character is so meta, you need to have it, it's so strong. And this video is mostly dedicated at you, if you think that you are within that range. And no matter where you are, don't focus too much on meta discussions. What I mean by that is, if there is a character that you really like, you like their characterization, the design, the gameplay, and people tell you, yeah, but that character is not really meta. He is not particularly good. He is basically a 5-star Sacrosa. Easy skip, my dude. All references to people who said that Kazuha was bad are purely casual here. Just pull for that kind of character. You're not going to regret. What you're going to regret is build a character just because some people tell you, oh, this character is super meta. It's super meta. And then it's only meta for like 1 or 2 Abyss rotations. And then you forgot that you even have it in the roster. My biggest example, like from my own Genshin Impact quote-unquote career, I would call it history more than career, is Venti. I pulled for him on his rerun. I was still a fairly new player around the time. Like, I had been playing for some time, but my account was still relatively new. And I kept reading, oh, man, Venti is a game changer. The crowd control, oh, the AoE, oh, he's insane. He's a must-have. So I pulled for him, and I lost the first 50-50 to Diluc, and it felt a bit bad. But I actually like playing Diluc, so it was not that bad. And then I got Venti. He's probably the 5-star that I have above level 70 that I play the least. Not only is he not very useful right now, because we keep facing monsters that ignore his crowd control basically everywhere in the open world, but also in the Abyss his crowd control doesn't work. And in addition to that, I'm not a huge fan of his design. Like, I was coping, yeah, I don't really like his design and characterization, but he's so meta, oh, finally I have Venti, and I don't use him. Honestly, I swear to God, if I could trade Venti for an extra constellation on Chi-Chi, I would do it. The only place where I play Venti is when some of my low adventure rank friends ask me to help them farm this domain. Yeah, Value of Remembrance. I have a few friends who need to farm this for Xiao, and in this domain, like, you activate it, you use Venti's burst, then you drop any AoE and you clear the domain in like 10 seconds. That's the only place where I basically use Venti. Unless it's like, I don't know, a floor 10 of the Abyss, and I want to do things quickly because I'm streaming and I want to move to floor 12 as soon as I can. And yeah, when it comes to floor 10 and 11, and there are only Hilichurls and treasure hunters, oh, Venti is super meta. Must pull, right? Right? Yeah. So, be careful about meta discussions. Now, if you're an Omega Whale, you can pull for whoever you want. And after you have all the characters, all the weapons, all the constellations, all the refinement, then it's okay probably to see what people with a lot of spare time end up finding when it comes to team compositions and perfect, like, frame perfect rotations. But especially if you are free to play, casual player, low spender, you should not do you should not decide which characters to pull based on meta. The meta changes consistently. Like, right now, the Abyss, as I said earlier, if you are on the 12th floor, if you have 4 Geo character, probably will work with the 3 as well. But if you have 4 Geo characters, the 12th floor is a joke. Like, you're going to steamroll it. We don't know what's going to happen 5 days from now. They could change it completely. So, are the characters that are uber meta right now become trash a week from now? You need to be careful. Because not only you have to think about the Primogens, you also need to think about the Mora, the books, the talent books, experience books, the weapons. Like, building characters in Genshin Impact takes forever. And the Abyss is such a small amount of content. You should not pull your characters based on that. I honestly think that this is not one of those like feel-good talks like, oh yeah, Sir Grindelot said that I should only pull for the characters that I like. Oh, feels good, man. No. It's true. Like, you can clear the abyss if you have properly invested characters in teams that make sense. They don't have to be meta. Like, look, I used the Chi-Chi. What was the team? It made no sense. It was Chi-Chi, Albedo, Shinchu Official. So basically, Chi-Chi and Shinchu would freeze the target. And then Albedo's turret will remove the freeze, and then Official was just doing some nonsense off field. The team made no sense. But the time in which I cleared the Abyss was good enough to make 9 stars. Because all of those characters are fairly well invested. So, investment, in my experience, is more important than meta. I'm sure that if instead of Chi-Chi I was using Kokomi in that team with Shanling and whatever, that you need to have a perfect rotation with Woba and like, what is it called? Use a Viridescent Venerer user to debuff Pyro Resistance the moment Guoba throws his fire, so that then later Shanling... There is nothing wrong with doing that, don't get me wrong, it's cool, yeah, nice. But should people pull for Kokomi because they see that? I don't think so. Like, in general. And if you like a lot Kokomi, then go for it. But if you don't like Kokomi, don't pull for her on every run just because you see people, like, drooling over the Kokomi, Shanling, whatever it is team. And the same applies for Raiden Hyper Carry, the team that I play all the time. She's probably my favorite character in the game right now, in terms of gameplay. And I play her all the time. And right now she's in my best performing team. What will happen next week? I honestly have no idea. Anything could happen next week. Raiden Upper Carry could be a trash team. Maybe my Chi-Chi Continental team could be the ultimate meta option. No one really knows. So, you should follow the discussions about meta, optimal strategies, and optimal, like, rotation to have an idea of how to play characters and to have an idea of how those characters play when they're on the field and how they can match with your other characters, with your current roster. But don't pull for characters based on Abyss meta. I often mention during my streams the mining meta. If you want to be a mining meta overlord, in your team you want John Lee all the time, then you want Rosaria for the speed buff during the night, then you want Sayu, because she's an animo character with a claymore, and then you want a second animo character, possibly Sacrose with dot sprayers. This will allow you to have the maximum speed on the map during the day and during the night, especially during the night thanks to Rosaria. And you have John Lee, who is the best at mining, and you have a claymore because sometimes John Lee doesn't clear all the single mining spots. Like, some of them can be outside of his range, so you need a claymore to clear them efficiently. Sayu is not the best at that. She needs 4 hits to clear a mining spot, which feels bad, man. But still, should you pull based on mining meta? I don't know, I often joke about the fact that during an average month in Genshin Impact, I spend way more time mining than clearing the Abyss. So maybe yes, not really, I'm just joking, of course. But the Abyss, let's put it this way, it's content that, and I'm only referring to the 12th floor, it's content that lasts 7, 8, 9 minutes every 2 weeks each month. That's a very limited amount of content. So I really don't believe you should make your pools based on that. Floors under floor 12, like 9, 10, and 11, are much easier, and they are designed to be, let's say, progress check on your character. Meaning that those floors are relatively easy to clear, but you need to have certain team compositions with the characters that are leveled up decently. You don't need top meta teams, absolutely not. But at least having the right compositions and having the correct characters of the correct element, that will help you a lot. Even if they're just the starter characters and a few more characters in addition to them. Floor 12 is a little bit harder, but again, it's mostly about investment and knowing how to play your characters and equipping them properly in terms of artifact, weapons, rotations, all that sort of stuff. So if you only pull for waifus and husbandos, don't be a piece of trash when it comes to making fun of meta slaves. And if you're a meta slave... Oh, I was on the wrong character. If you're a meta slave, don't make fun of people who only pull for waifus and husbandos, especially when they still get full stars in the 80s. So that's my message for today. Nothing wrong with the meta, just try to leave it more graciously. Live and let live. Live and let live. And use Chi-Chi, build the Chi-Chi. Watch my videos, Chi-Chi is good. I should make a video about Chi-Chi. Because I believe the new clan set changed her role quite a lot, but that will be for another time. This video is already pretty long, and I will not edit it, I will not cut anything out. So, yeah, I've been ranting about meta and random things for about 20 minutes. That's my point of view on the meta in Genshin Impact. So, I'll be checking out. See you next time. Bye. Bye-bye, guys. Take care.